Most sales leaders have no real idea how long it takes to get a new salesperson up to speed to become competent and independent and be effective in the field. Oh, they have expectations, but they rarely have anything to do with reality. This is Sales Untraining, a very different kind of sales podcast. 3 out of 4 salespeople are failing. They're falling short of their revenue. Why doesn't sales training work? That's what this sales podcast is about. It's your weekly sales strategy guide designed to rewire your sales brain. Welcome to Sales Untraining. I'm Kelly Riggs. It is your weekly sales strategy guide designed to completely rewire your sales brain. And I hope you'll take a moment, like and subscribe to the podcast. More than anything, if you could share it with somebody who needs to be in on the conversation of what in the world is wrong with sales training. Well, plenty. Hey, by the way, also have one new request. If I may infringe upon your time for a few minutes. Hey, if you like the podcast, if you get good content out of it, if it makes a difference, could you leave a positive review on Apple or Spotify? That would be fantastic. Listen, today we're talking about how long does it actually take to get a salesperson up to speed? I've been asking this question for a very long time, and I'm shocked at the variety of answers. I actually talked to some sales leaders who are like 2 weeks. 2 weeks. We get them in-house. We teach them our product. We're out in the field, because we hire experienced salespeople. But you dive a little deeper and you start to look at how those salespeople are actually doing, and you get a much different story. 2 weeks, really? Now, some of you are going, well, that's crazy. We're a technical team. We have specialty products. We do custom manufacturing, engineering, design, whatever the case may be. We're talking 6 months. We're talking a year. I had one guy say, like 6 years. and he wasn't wrong, just using the wrong metric. It's like, highly experienced, can answer any question, can get out there and do whatever needs to be done without any kind of support. And by that, I mean without any sales training, management support, that kind of thing. But that is a huge range of time in order to think about how long does it take to get someone up to speed. So I like to drill down a bit and ask the question this way. If you took a new salesperson, they were experienced enough to understand what sales is, how it works. They've got 5, 6, 8 years on their background, maybe as low as 2 to 4 years if they've been successful. And they're coming into your company, but it's a new product for them. How long does it take to get up to speed? That's going to vary based on how technical it is and how much support they require. Here's the thing. They've never really been asked that question. You could see the wheels grinding. Oh, I don't know. 4 weeks, 6 weeks. We bring them in, we do some product training. I send them out in the field, or they go out with a product manager or some other veteran salesperson. We have a shadowing or mentoring program. Okay, good. How long does it take? Well, it shouldn't take longer than 6 weeks. It's not what I'm asking. What I'm asking is, how long does it take? And most sales leaders don't know. Now, right now, you may be going, well, I know. I can tell you exactly how long it takes. Can you really? Do you know exactly when that new salesperson is break even? In other words, all of your outlay of cash, and if you want to limit it to sales or salary and benefits and training costs, okay, let's just start with that. How long before you recoup that money in gross profit? Listen, I'm shocked if you know, because people just don't know. I would tell you that when I was a sales manager way, way back in the day, I didn't know, didn't have a clue. In fact, my company didn't share that with me. But if you know, for example, let's just say it takes 6 months, and I'm just going to take round numbers for the sake of argument. Let's say you're paying somebody $120K all in, salary, benefits, the whole kit. So you're saying 6 months, and they're going to recoup $60,000 in gross profit. Now, time out. Okay, let's make sure we understand. If you're hiring for a brand new territory, that's not true. I'd be shocked again. But you're bringing them into an existing territory that's already producing margin. It's got a customer base. It's got revenue and margin coming in. Well, that's not a fair comparison because, frankly, day one, they're paying for themselves just as a babysitter. But that's not the metric to use, at least not in my book. How much do they have to increase sales to produce the amount of margin that will pay for them? Otherwise, you're paying a babysitter. Now, you pay salespeople to grow sales the vast majority of times. I know there are some exceptions, but typically you're paying a salesperson to grow sales. So let's take that. You have to start over every month. Let's just say it's not an existing territory, and every month you start from zero. You sell equipment, and that equipment each month, if you stopped last month, everything we got paid, you may have stuff in the pipeline already. You may have a nice funnel built up. I'm not talking about closed business that's in queue that you're servicing now and you won't deliver for 6, 8, 12 months because that's your lead time. No, I'm talking about starting from today. You bring in a new salesperson and they have to start producing revenue. Month one, they're not producing revenue. Month 2, month 3, month 4, when does it start? When does it start to trickle in? And for the sake of argument again, because there are a ton of variables here, let's just use closed orders, not actually delivered orders with revenue intake, because it gets even worse if you look at that. Let's say you've got a 6 or 8 month selling cycle, buy cycle, and then it takes 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks of lead time or more, and then you don't get paid for a certain amount of time. You may get some milestone payments, but you're not getting your margin payments in. How long does it take? I mean, this bears scrutiny because what we should be doing is measuring sales leaders based on their ability to bring salespeople up to speed, help them become independent, producing revenue and margin on their own, and then be able to chart specifically when that new hire breaks even and starts to produce profit for the company instead of gut feel and all of these things. Because here's what happens. Let's be very transparent. Many times, and when I say many, I mean like the majority of time, you have a certain number of salespeople who are pulling you over the finish line, perhaps even including getting you past 100% of your revenue objective this year. So you've got veteran, established salespeople with good order flow, good margins, and they're pulling you across the finish line. But a significant part of your salespeople are not. They're not producing profit, especially new ones. Especially ones in brand new territories or starting from scratch. And we have no idea how long it takes. And this should matter to you. It should matter as a sales leader. Certainly should matter if you're in the C-suite or you're a business owner or a general manager, because if it takes an inordinate amount of time to get people up to speed producing independently, then what's the problem? Or do we have expectations that are wildly out of bounds? I've talked with sales leaders, with the CEO, general manager, owner present, and they're like, yeah, we can get people up to speed in 6 weeks. Except you go back and look at their history, and that's blatantly wrong. They're not doing it. And what do? It's the economy. It's the salespeople. You just can't find good people. It has nothing to do with the leader, does it? Or their training or coaching or development or mentoring or their expectations. Here's the reality. You need to understand exactly how hard it is and how long it takes to get a salesperson up to speed to milestone number 1. Not wildly experienced, enormous background, can handle any situation, any scenario, can close any deal without help. No. First milestone, which we can define loosely as we can put them in the field. They know enough to intelligently ask questions, answer a handful of questions, to know what they don't know so that they can seek technical support or sales support or managerial support. But that doesn't prevent us from putting them in the field. What do they have to learn and know in order to get to that first milestone? I can send you out into the field and you can make sales calls. Doesn't mean you know everything. Doesn't mean you can close every deal, but it means you can be functional. What's the first milestone look like? Listen, there are 4 enormous buckets of learning that have to get filled up to a certain extent to even reach milestone number 1. Let's start first with just knowledge. Speaking the vocabulary of the industry, understanding the market, its applications for your product, its uses for your product, all of those things, getting functionally literate to some level in terms of your knowledge of the industry. Now we can move to products, learning your products. No, not knowing all of them, learning all of them, mastering all of them, but drawing a line in the sand. How much do they have to learn about which specific products to put you out in the field and go have conversations and to make a sales call? So you may have 10 product lines or, bazillions of SKUs, but you know that 80% of your business or a good portion of your business comes from 4 primary products. Do we need to teach them those 4 primary products? If the answer is yes, how long does it take? Please don't tell me a week in training at sales school or at the company, because you're wrong. You just are. I mean, the forgetting curve alone tells me in a week they've forgotten 90% of the new information you've given them on products. And just being exposed to those products in the course of a week, especially most training being fire hose training, they're not retaining a fraction of that stuff. So no, it's not 2 weeks. It's probably not 2 months. I mean, you can start moving there. It's a graph curve, certainly, as they're escalating their knowledge, and it depends upon how much time you give them in real customers' locations, how much time you give them with a product manager, a marketing manager, or a salesperson in the field looking at actual installations. How much time do they get with you, sales manager, sales leader, working alongside of them in the field, making calls? Highly variable. And that's just 2 things. Listen, you also know they've got to master all of the workflow processes and systems inside of your office in order to be functional. They've got to learn how to handle your CRM system, and they've got to learn how to handle the quote process, the presentation process, the order intake process, and all the reports that you have them doing as a salesperson. Systems and processes, that could take a couple of weeks just in and of itself to learn how to actually do it on your own, right? And so that may be small growth over time, and it may take longer than 2 weeks, but aggregated time, at least. And then we get into selling skills. That's another big bucket. That includes your sales process, your sales planning process, all of the budgeting and every other thing that goes along with it. You know what the bottom line is? Getting up to speed in order to be functional at milestone number 1 is ridiculously difficult. And your expectations are likely to be way out of phase with reality, right? And so what happens is we get disappointed. They're not advancing like we'd like to, because in our minds we're expecting X and we're only getting this. And it's because we don't understand what that runway looks like to get to functional. And you really need to go through the process of figuring out what that looks like for your world. Well, let's take a run at it. Coming up next, let's figure out exactly how long maybe it should take to get up to speed to be able to sell on your own. Stay with me. Hey, thanks for making Sales Untraining your first listen of the week. And if you find something you like, if you hear something that's interesting, I hope you'll share it with somebody you know. You can find out more about me at bizlockerroom.com or email me, kelly@bizlockerroom.com. Now back to the show. Defining the finish line is critical. Zig Ziglar talked about it all the time. See You at the Top, one of the key books that among many that he wrote, and that I read and that I bought into, that if I want to reach the very pinnacle of what my capabilities are, I need to stretch for all that I can get. I need to push just a little beyond what I think I'm capable of. And when I reached that, I realized I'm capable of much, much more. But it is that goal that matters to me that drives my behavior, that causes me to want to stretch, to do more, to reach further. And so I always had written goals. Now, let me caveat that with this. Hey, welcome back. Sales Zone Training. Good to have you. Listen, if you really want to go next level as a sales leader, you really need to understand the numbers. One of the things that I'm trying to do as someone who does this for a living is to train sales leaders how to think like business people. When you think like a business person, your relationship with the owner, general manager, CEO, whatever is going to change because they're going to see in you somebody who reflects not just on, getting sales or hitting a revenue objective or whatever, but thinking in terms of margins and costs and how long it takes to get returns on investment. The biggest investment you have as a sales leader clearly is the people that work for you. So if you're hiring someone new, there's so many questions that go into this process. Why are you hiring someone new? Do you have a lot of turnover? Do you frequently find yourself blaming your salespeople that you can't find people, et cetera, et cetera? Most hiring processes are dramatically flawed and we're not finding the right people. But let's just assume for the moment you're getting the right people. So to hire someone and get them up to speed is extraordinarily costly. When you lose someone, according to the estimates that are out there, and there's boatloads of research and the numbers really are all over the board, but we can work our way towards a mean, you're probably costing the company somewhere between 50 and 150% of salary for the person that you're hiring. Now, if they're full commission, you got to take averages, right? But it's costing the company a bunch of money when you have turnover. Turnover is ridiculously expensive. But you just turn someone over, you lose a whole lot of things. You lose continuity, you lose relationships, you lose institutional knowledge, you lose a lot of things. It costs money to replace someone. So that's interviewing, hiring, onboarding, training, your time as a sales leader to bring someone new up to speed. You really need to understand or have some concept of what that sounds like. What does it look like on an Excel spreadsheet? How much does it cost me to get this person on board before they start to return on our invested dollar? So I'll go back to my earlier scenario. Let's just say for the sake of argument, it takes you 6 months to get someone to break even. That's probably way too low, but let's just assume 6 months to get there. So if I'm paying them $125,000, take half of that, add half the benefits, add the training costs, add out-of-pocket costs, et cetera, opportunity costs, if you want to throw that in. There's a lot of things that go into that. But just take the conservative cost. Let's just say for the sake of argument, $75K. They've got to produce $75K in margin. Now, what you're suggesting, if they're breaking even at 6 months, and $75K sounds light to me, but if that's what it takes to get them to break even on your investment at 6 months, then they have to have produced sales with margins of that amount of money. Now, if they produce that amount of money in margins and you're also paying commission, that comes out. Other things may come out of that. In fact, if you get into a really deep dive of what it is returning on that margin, you got to take out marketing costs, G&A costs. I mean, there's a lot of things that go in there, but we'll just ignore that for now. So what does it take to get them there? When you understand what the runway is, in my experience, it can be anywhere from 6 to 15 months, somewhere in that bell curve, to get people completely up to speed to first milestone. Not experienced, not world-class, not top 5%. Very, very, very unusual. But just to get them to first milestone, there's a lot of money involved, and you need to understand what that looks like, because every bad hire you make is killing the company. Yeah, it's costing us another $75K to start over. And the continued loss of continuity, consistency, opportunity costs, and all of those kinds of things. So many times, even this is not your fault in some ways, because your leader, the CEO, the general manager, the business owner, should have these expectations, should be clearly communicated, and this should be an exercise you go through before you take charge of a sales team. Doesn't happen, but It should, right? So you can get way ahead of the curve and go next level. Now, how do you get someone to consistently and predictably that break-even level? I don't care if it's 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 15 months. I don't care where it is. How do you get them there? And this is the answer. You build out a timeline spreadsheet that takes you inevitably to that level of competency. That means you have to highly detailed plan out week 1, week 2, month 1, month 2, month 3. What do they learn? In what sequence do they learn it? How do you reinforce it? When do you test for it? When do you put them in the field with product managers, marketing managers, other salespeople? When and how often do you ride with that salesperson, and how do you measure their success? My experience, very, very, very few sales leaders have this level of proficiency. They just don't have it. And again, some of it's not your fault. You've not been trained. Those expectations haven't been set. But you know, if your leader, general manager, owner, CEO, someone like that, is unhappy with the way things or sales are progressing, eventually they're going to start looking at you. You can only blame the market and your salespeople so long before, maybe it's the sales leader. It's in your best interest to be able to work through this onboarding process. And by the way, if you want help, this is what I do. Part of the services that I offer, I can take you through that process, but you have to map it out. I take brand new salesperson number 1. I know what first week looks like. I know and I'm talking about details. Morning and afternoon, where are they going to be? Who are they with? What are the expectations I set? We review once a week to make sure they're learning, to read and to test, reset, retest as necessary, to ensure that we're bringing them along at a predictable level. Why? Because when capabilities and competencies improve, confidence soars. But if you put people into the field with limited knowledge, and trust me, I don't care how long they spend in your company learning products, it's limited. Their retention levels are abysmal. That's just the way the brain works. If you put them into the field with limited knowledge, limited experience, very little understanding of the nomenclature in the industry, applications, what the market is, how to apply your products, et cetera, their confidence level is close to zero. You can't allow that. You just can't. A lot of salespeople fail because we don't bring them up to speed in a measurable, predictable way. Instead, we hire experienced salespeople and expect them to get it. How's that working out? It's Sales on Training. I'll talk to you next time.
Sales on Training is a production of Business Locker Room and Pod About It Productions. Music and editing by Doug Branson. To get more Kelly, visit bizlockerroom.com.